Hello, I'm very pleased to say that I'm making a video so soon after the last video that I just that Shane kindly put on my channel for me. I thought I would actually do one because, how can I put it, I want to put as many videos up as I possibly can, you know, because I've only got like 43 videos, so this will be my 44th video. I'd like to do these a little bit more regularly, you know. It's one of the things is having something to say, having topics that are of value and that other people, the viewers, would be interested in actually wanting to watch and enjoy. So I've got some more books here. Some of them I think I might have shown before, others that I know are new because I just bought them. So one of the first ones I think I want to show is The Last Jews in Berlin. Now, I bought this back in the 80s. Yeah, it's a long time ago. This is about Jews that started to live in the underground. So they had to find places, apartments where they could live and where they wouldn't be discovered by those that were perhaps lost their homes as a result of the bombing during World War II. It's something that I learnt from my grandmother, because I'd never really considered it. Now, she was born in 1910, so she lived through quite a lot. I mean, she lived through the First World War, she lived through the Great Depression, she lived through the Anschluss, she lived through the Second World War, and she lived through 10 years of occupation. So that was the Russians and the Allies occupied Austria for 10 years after the end of the war. And she told me something that sort of caught my attention, you know, and one of the things she told me was she wouldn't move away from Vienna. See, because Vienna was also badly bombed by the Allies, and the reason being was because for fear of losing her home. So as long as she stayed in her home, nobody would actually steal her home from her, if that makes any sense. And so a lot of Jews lost their homes as a result of being sent to the concentration camps. And so when they came back, those that survived came back after the war back to their homes, only to realise that somebody else was living in their homes. So people were stealing homes, you know, stealing apartments because of the bombing. So they were bombed out of their own home, so they would go and look for somebody else's home to live in. So anyway, this book, The Last Jews in Berlin, this is about those that actually had to go underground. And one of the worst things is not to have any papers, you know, or to have papers that you could effectively protect yourself with. If you don't have any papers, there's a chance that you'd get arrested and either put in jail or sent to one of the camps. The author, Leonard Cross, what he did was he came across another person who actually started doing the research in Berlin, and he was able to talk to those people that actually survived, and he found it so upsetting that he developed a stutter, and so he could no longer continue with the project, with the research. He had to let it go and let Leonard Cross actually continue with the research, and eventually he finished the book. Now, like I said, this book was bought in the 80s, so a lot of those that actually survived the war were still alive at the time. Now, however, you know, so a lot of people will have passed on. I know because I used to be in the parachute regiment. I remember meeting some guys that were going to Arnhem, and Arnhem was like a famous campaign with the parachute regiment and the American Airborne to take the Arnhem Bridge. and we, you know, it became famous as a result of the film A Bridge Too Far that was written by Cornelius Ryan. The book was written by Cornelius Ryan, and they said that was the last event. They're not doing any more simply because of the age of the survivors of that particular campaign have passed on, or they're very, very elderly and could no longer travel on to Arnhem. But during the time of the books of this particular the researcher and the author who actually was able to complete the project and do all the research and write the book, a lot of the survivors of that particular time in Berlin, he was able to interview and he was able to talk to them, and I think but now, of course, when a lot of these people have passed on, you have to do a different type of research. You can no longer ask people, you know, all you have is like I say, documents, diaries, letters, interviews that were perhaps recorded on tape or on filmed for a documentary, one kind or another, and that's the only way you could actually do research now. So anyway, this is called The Last Jews in Berlin by Leonard Gross. Keeping on the same theme, this is a book by Eleanor J. Brecher, and it's called Schindler's Legacy. This is quite heavy to hold up, actually. The True Stories of the List Survivors. The foreword by Thomas Kennelly. Now, Thomas Kennelly wrote a book called Schindler's Ark, and Steven Spielberg, who himself is Jewish, decided to make a film called Schindler's List. Now, when I saw Schindler's List back in I think it must have been the early 90s, I went to London to see it. I went specifically to London to see it, and I remember being so enthralled by the story and so involved in the story that when the film was finished, it's almost like you were transported back in time, and it felt as though, even though you were there, I don't know how many hours, maybe 2 hours, I can't remember how long the film was, but it felt like it half an hour, you know. It's the only way I can best describe it. And I've read the book Schindler's Ark. Now, when I read the book, I understand that he novelized it, so that is to say that he took the stories from the survivors and then he weaved the story around what he was told by the survivors, or Schindler's Jews. Now, this book is called Schindler's Legacy, and it's also written from the point of view of those that actually survived the war and were Schindler's Jews, effectively. And I always like a book that actually has an angle to it that makes it unique from compared to other books. And this one is unique because it tells of various stories of various couples, families that were able to that have good memories and were able to tell their experiences of what they went through during the war, what they went through staying working in Krakow, which was the factory that Oskar Schindler owned, and their experiences in the camp, and how Oskar Schindler was able to keep them alive and keep them fed, because you can't, you know, you would need nourishment to be able to, you know, to do your work. I remember when I was at work and I went for training, and it was for 3 hours or 4 hours, and the person that was taking the training said, make sure that you have you've eaten something and that you've drank something, because, you know, the training's going to go on for 3 or 4 hours. I remember her saying that, you know, and quite recently too. So if you're going to be working in a cold or in a factory, and you're going to be on your feet all day, you want to make sure that you have enough, or that you've eaten something, and that you've had something to drink, some water or something like that, to keep you going, to be able to get through your shift. So in this case, this is a book that I haven't read. I mean, there's so many books in my library that I haven't read. I haven't had the chance to read them, but this is a book that I wanted to pick out and show it on my channel, and like I say, these books will make me want to read the book at some point, to actually get back into the spirit of reading multiple books, as opposed to watching YouTube videos. So anyway, this is called Schindler's Legacy by Eleanor J. Brecker, and the foreword is by Thomas Kennelly, who wrote Schindler's Ark, and Steven Spielberg took that novel, it was effectively a novel, and made it and turned it into the film Schindler's List. Now, the last book that I want to show is called The Incomparable Crime. Now, this is a book about what happened to the Jews during World War II. So, Incomparable Crime by Roger Manvell and Heinrich Frankel. I haven't got my best glasses on with me, but anyway. This is a book that I bought in a charity shop or a thrift store. Again, it's not a book that I've had the chance to read just yet, but it does say about how the author managed to get SS documents, and he was able to use that in his research for this particular book. And when I look at the back of the book, it actually has reproductions of documents. See, and as my regular viewers will know, that I'm a sucker for documents in book form. So whenever I find them, I have to buy them. But this was a book that was almost like, it's only after I flick through did I realise what I have. So it's almost like, when you have a big library of books, and you accumulate so much that you forget what you have. And it's only after I flick through this book that I realise that I have a book at the end notes with all these documents in. So this talks about the concentration camps. What's unique about this book is a first edition. It was published in 1967, so it's going to be fresh. So if the author has actually spoken to the survivors, any survivors of the Birkenau camp, for example, their memory is going to be fresh, because it's only like 20 years or 22 years, let's say 20 years. I don't know how long he's done his research, but let's just say between 15 and 20 years after the end of the war, where the author has access to the survivors. And I'm sure if he actually talks to one survivor, that survivor will then give him a telephone number or an address that he can write to other survivors, and therefore talk to as many survivors as he possibly can, to get a better picture and understanding of what it was like to be a Jew during World War II. So this is called Incomparable Crime by Roger Mansell or Marshall and Friedrich Frankel. Sorry, I haven't got my glasses. Yeah, Friedrich Frankl. Okay, now these books here I've got here are recent purchases. These are the books that I've recently just got. This is something, this is called While Berlin Burns, the Diary of Hans Georg von Schudnitz, 1943 to 1945. I love diaries. This one is a reissue. This is or repress, a reprint. I've only just got this recently, and what I liked about it was the fact that he actually gives his own impression and his observations of what it was like to live through the bombing of Berlin in those 2 years. Whereas I have another book called Woman in Berlin by Anonymous, because she didn't want to give her name, and that was the last days of the war, where this is like 2 years from 43 to 45. So this will give me a thorough, I believe, eyewitness account of what it was like for somebody in Berlin to go through what they went through during those 2 years, which really, I don't think I could get it anywhere else. I'm sure there are other books like that, but I don't know of them, and it's only until I actually find them will I actually know a little bit more. But thankfully this book is written in English, so I can read and understand it straight away, whereas if it was written in German it would probably take maybe 2 or 3 read-throughs for me to actually really understand what's been written in German, because German, even though that was my first language, I never sort of studied it in school. So, While Berlin Burns, the Diary of Hans Georg von Schudnitz, from 1943 to 1945. Now, I should have shown this before that one, but never mind. This is one of my prized possessions. This is something that I only just got recently. It's called Berlin Dokumente, 1944 to 1961. I mean, this is all in German, obviously. There's some great photographs that I've never seen before. You see that that photograph there? I've never seen that, and it's always great to see photos that you've never seen before, because photographs gives a really good impression of what the past was once looked like. See this one there with the T-34 tank, Russian tank. This, I believe, will be bone dry to read through, you know, and it probably take me an age to read through it, and not only to read through it, but to understand what it actually says. But these books are valuable because there are documents, and if there's anything that you could discover, if you want to make discoveries, do your own investigation, do your own research, you want documents, diaries, letters, and perhaps interviews of people that were there just soon after the event. So, or as it was happening at the time. So this is one that I really would like to get my teeth into at some point, but there are books that I'm already reading, so this will have to go into a queue. So this is called Berlin Dokumente, 1944 bis 1961, which means documents from 1944 to 1961. Here's another one. This actually weighs. This is quite heavy. It's similar to the Schindler's Legacy. This one's called Defense of Berlin by Jean Edward Smith. This is a first edition. This was published in 1963. This author actually gets to interview a lot of those that were in Berlin at the time, before the building of the Berlin Wall, and those that actually lived through the war years in Berlin from say 1939 to 1945. This is a book that I bought because it was cheap, and when I actually got it, I thought, oh yeah, I've hit the bullseye with this one, simply because the author was actually living and breathing the situation as it occurred at the time, as opposed to say an author who studies Berlin history and only publishes the book last year or 2 years ago or maybe 10 years ago. You know, this was published as the Berlin Wall was up, and it's one of the things that I want to do, is to be able to collect books that were published at the time, so that you get a feel of what it was like when Berlin was like an island and all walled. I have to say, when I got this book, it was like a surprise, and I was sincerely delighted to see that it was published in 1963 as opposed to 2013, shall we say. So, The Defense of Berlin by Jean Edward Smith. And this one is my final book. This is The Berlin Republic, German Unification and a Decade of Changes. Editors by Winard Gellner and John D. Robertson. Now, this book is what I'd call an essay book. An essay book is like you get, say, 10 or 12 or 13 chapters, and each chapter is written by a separate author, and then they collect all these chapters, and then they make a book out of it. Now, these are written by scholars, you know, professors, those that work in universities, and when you get people like that, what they have is like grant, or that, you know, they get their own funding, they get time, and then they have the credentials, so they'll probably have letters after their name, and if they come from a prestigious university, a lot of the doors will be opened up for them. So if they wanted to go into the Munich archive or a Berlin archive, and they say, well, I'm Professor John Smith from Harvard or from Princeton, and oh yes, Mr. Smith, why don't you know, you're welcome to our archive. You can come in any time you like, and you can take photocopies of any documents that you wish to take. Now, if I were to do it, I'd probably have difficulties. I might not even get in because, you know, I don't have the backing of letters after my name. I'm not a professor. I'm not, you know, I don't work at, or I don't have a position in Harvard or Princeton or Eton. So it would be difficult for me. But for these people, you know, they'll roll up the red carpet for them. So their research and their thesis, is that a word? Of what it is that they've discovered in the archive will be expressed in how they write their article. So it could be a series of articles that they write, and one of the editors of this particular book will go through their articles, and then they'll read through one. It's like, oh yeah, can we use this article? We would like to put this in our book. So this is a book that actually came out in the 90s. So this is the aftermath of the fall of the Berlin Wall. So it'd be very interesting to see what the perspective was from that time when when this book was actually published, and what it is that they actually say, because this is a new edition. This is a book that I've only just purchased. It's not a book that I've actually read yet, but but because I have these scholars actually writing their own chapters, shall we say, put it that way, they'll have unique angles and unique perspectives and insights into what it was like after the fall of the Berlin Wall, and what the West German authorities, how they were going to reincorporate East Germany and make that a unified Germany. And when you have a unified Germany, what were the perspective, which is, I don't know this yet, but just as the thought sort of enters my mind, what were their thoughts when East Germany was reunified with West Germany, and how the East thought of the West actually effectively taking over their own country? Because I still believe that Germany is still divided between East and West, like say England is between the north, north of Watford, shall we say. There is a division between East and West. So anyway, this is called the Berlin Republic, German Unification and a Decade of Changes, and the editors are Winard Gellner and John D. Robertson. So that pretty much concludes my presentation. I hope you're all well. I hope you're in good stead, and that you have seen my video all the way to the end. And please, if you're unsubscribed, please resubscribe, leave a comment, give us a thumbs up, and hope to see you all again very soon. Auf Wiedersehen, alles Gute und fall nicht nieder.